Hey, Wael.
Hey Alex, how are you?
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to read the ad and then we'll get into it. Um, Here we go. The Big Technology Podcast is sponsored by MediaOcean. Looking for a job in big tech? You might want to take a look at MediaOcean. They were just named by Ad Age as the number one place to work in advertising technology. Go to MediaOcean.com/big tech to learn more about the company and check out their careers hub. MediaOcean is building the mission critical platform for omnichannel advertising. If that sounds cool, or if you just want to find out what those buzzwords mean, hit up MediaOcean.com/big tech and browse their job listings. And big thanks to MediaOcean for supporting the Big Technology Podcast. Okay, let's do it.
Let's do
Hello
it.
and welcome. Hello and welcome to the Big Technology Podcast, a show for cool-headed, nuanced conversation of the tech world and beyond. Joining us today is one of the most original thinkers in tech I've ever met, and someone who is not only a thinker, but a person who's had the guts to put his own safety on the line for causes that matter to him. Wael Ghonim helped spark the Egyptian revolution in 2011 by creating a Facebook page that rallied the country against the regime. He's also a friend of mine. I think I can say that. Who's
Yeah,
helped
of
me.
course.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You are a
Who,
friend of mine too.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so it's confirmed. And while you've helped me think through the issues through a different lens, and I've been looking through this conversation since before I started the podcast. So, an official welcome to the show. Welcome, Wael.
Thank you, Alex, and I'm happy to be with you. And we've kind of developed an interesting relationship as we got introduced to each other. And since then, I'm happy yeah, of course, call you a friend because I do think that at the end of the day, I'm getting from you is good vibes and experiences, and we share insights. So it's a good way to start a friendship, anyway.
Yeah, likewise. I've told you this before, but I feel like every time we talk about tech and talk about life, I come away having learned something, and not only like learned like a new fact or figure, but a new way of appreciating the world, a new way of looking at the world, and that means
I'm
a
glad
lot. So
you
thank you
see it that way.
for sure, 100%. So I think I'd like to start just by introducing you to the audience. So you were working for Google as a head of marketing in the Middle East in 2011. And then the Egyptian regime killed a man, Khaled Said. And you created a Facebook page, We Are All Khaled Said. So can you take, which eventually ended up leading to the overthrow of the regime. So can you take us back to that moment? What were you feeling then? And what were you thinking?
Well, it was basically a moment of frustration because I'm someone who was born in 1980, and since I was 1 year old, since I was like coming to life, there was only one president that runs the country, and the ruling
Mm-hmm.
party was kind of getting old in their positions of power. It's been like 30 years at the time, and unfortunately, the way the country runs has not been ideal in the perspective of a lot of people, especially young people who were kind of exposed to the global phenomena, who got together on the internet. Who so when the event of Khalid Said death happened and the response that came from the government about his case. Was just basically a denial and saying that no, he did not die from being beaten up by police officers. He just swallowed some drugs, and that's what basically caused him to die. When that happened, I started a page, and my idea at the time was not to start any kind of massive unrest or any kind of massive revolutions or anything. It was just as simple as I know how to communicate. I learned how to communicate. I have a background in engineering and as well as master in business administration and a lot of experience in the street. And it must be that people like me should be doing something about the environment. So I was trying to raise awareness about police brutality, human rights violations, the calling for democracy in Egypt, and all of that was happening kind of like in the realm of between 2010 and for months until 2011 happened. Just to give people perspective of the numbers, after 3 days of creating that Facebook page, about 100,000 people were on it. And the page grew like to when the time the revolution kind of started, the page had about 400, 500,000 members. And at the time in 2011, that was like a huge number within a page that has some sort of a political agenda. And at the time, because of my frustration and because of my desire to do something, I just decided to take a bit of a risk by operating this page anonymously. So it was not a full risk, it was an anonymous management of the page. And
Right,
basically
and
what
it
happened,
is
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to
Well, I'll
say
just say it
that,
was interesting.
yeah, the moments, there's a bit of a delay, so it's okay. But I
Oh
was
yeah,
going to
Wael,
just
the
say
floor is
that
yours. Yeah.
the way events unfold is not about moments. Actually, there was no, like, we try as journalists, or we try as people who write books, and we try as people who try and understand experiences to come up with some sort of an analysis of what happened. But most of the time, there is always like a butterfly effect, a trailing effect for all the events. So it was not just the Khalid Said death that triggered everything. I did not join politics just because he died. You know what I mean? It's mostly just general observation, frustration, anger that eventually gets manifested when an event like the what happened to Khalid Said happens. And then as we grouped, and as people were together, when the events in Tunisia happened, I kind of had a change of my own internal faith towards whether should we or should we not do something in the streets. Not that I'm the one who holds the key. I
And
just
what
had
happened
a
in Tunisia?
in Tunisia, basically, in 14th of January, Ben Ali, the president of Tunisia for over 20 years, due to protests, announced that he is resigning, and he had to flew outside of Tunisia. At the time, actually, his plane
Hmm.
was on the air, and they were trying to find the pilot was trying to find which country is going to take him, because France said no. A few other countries said no,
Hmm.
we can't have you because there's a lot of trouble. And he ended up landing in Saudi Arabia. But the point I was trying to make is that kind of event gave us a perspective that actually change in systems could happen, that individuals are powerful. At the time, I thought the power of the people is greater than the people in power. I still think the same, but it's kind of like it came manifested in the scene. So I just used the page and the 400,000 people within the page to call for let's all, I just put a date and a time and hoped for us to start working towards this. Of course, just to clarify, I'm not saying that I'm the one who just ignited it. The real ones who ignited it are the regime. And if I was not there, it would have been a different scenario that takes people somewhere. That's also not favorable, because at the end of the day, there was like a total collapse in the system, and that was also met with a total new technology that's coming bright and exciting. Everybody was excited on Facebook and liking and hearting, and there was no heart at the time, liking and getting like in the hype of like feeling that they're powerful, that they can do things, which is kind of true. But at the end of the day, that kind of contributed to the fall of President Mubarak. During the revolution for 18 days, I got arrested for 11 days out of the 18 days. They captured me from the street, and I was arrested for about 11 days, and there was huge pressure coming from the street, coming from different governments, different countries, and also, like, of course, Google as the company have done some diplomatic effort to just try and help me out, not to get me out, but just to make sure that I'm okay, because at the time no one even knew where I was. I was just basically taken out from the street and put in solitary
Hmm.
confinement in somewhere that I did not even personally knew, because they cover my eyes. So I mean, long story short, it was basically this kind of a collective action that got together, and I was in the middle of it because of the uh, how internet savvy, and also how frustrated and how driven I was about having a better future for the country.
Right, and the way that you describe it is, great perspective, talking about how what happened was a manifestation of frustration past. But on the other hand, it does take a certain type of individual to help lead what you led. And I'd love to speak about social media throughout this conversation, because obviously our perspectives on Facebook have changed since then. It was sort of the height of why people liked Facebook, and we'll get to that in the next question. But I just want to know from your perspective, like personally, you must have known that your life, you had a pretty good life, working for Google, and you must have known that your life was going to change getting involved. So what made you feel it was worthwhile to put your personal well-being at risk to lead something like this? Because when an individual, and I know it was a group, but they eventually found you, they find the individuals that are
Hmm.
helping to spark it. When an individual goes against a government, that's a bold thing to do. So I'm curious if you even made a calculation, and what calculation went through your head when you decided to make this happen.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of recklessness and basically immaturity, combined with lack of knowledge, as well as a lot of bravery and drive to feel something. Like throughout my career, like the I remember the last few months at Google, I was not really happy at all. Like I just felt something is going on wrong. I did not come to life to live a boxed life in a way. Like I just operate out of my own resources, and we are here to just live life, whatever that is. I feel like there is something. I always feel that there is something stronger about the bonds between people, and there has to be a price to try and bring those bonds together. So some people have to stand up and pay that price. My naivety protects me somehow, because if one sometimes really understand the consequences of their actions. Like, of course, while I was doing what I was doing, I thought there was a lot of security risks on myself, and I thought I might be arrested. But at the same time, I always reminded myself, even inside the prison, does it really matter how long do you live, or what kind of work do you do during your life? And of course, that question of mattering is important to even on whether you are a believer of a god or a divine power that wants us in a certain way, or even if you are a non-believer that just want to do things that matter in your own experience of life. Because I just believe that life is all about feelings. It's not about words, it's not about actions, it's really about feelings. The words and actions are just our way to feel whatever we feel. Many people who do actions, who are addicted to certain actions, they are just addicted to it because of the feel that it gives them. So in that sense, I kind of value my feelings a lot, and whenever I felt like I was not happy, I did not just keep moving on in the same direction. So I felt an internal urge all the time to do something, while at the same time I strive to balance it. I don't want to, I was an anonymous admin. I was hiding my identity. I did not stay at my mom's place on 25th of January because I was living in Dubai, so I would stay with my family, but I didn't. I stayed in one of my friends' offices. I changed my phones. I broke one of my SIM cards because I don't want the government to trace me if they are. So I kind of played, despite my naivety, I kind of played the game as much as I can. But I can tell you that when they captured me, I was not ready for it. So I knew that a lot of it
Uh,
was also naivety.
how did they find you? Because you were an anonymous admin of the page, and they ended up finding out who you were. And then what was it
They found
like?
me by chance. It was
What
not like
happened? Yeah.
I basically, there was an ex Google at the time. He I think he's still at Google Ideas or Jigsaw. The CEO of Google Jigsaw was visiting Cairo, and it was merely a coincidence, I swear, because the his plan to visit was many months before. It was settled many months before. And his name is Jared Cohen. So he was working for the Department of State
Hmm.
before Google. So when he came, he was coming to Egypt for a project about extremism, and he was in contact with the government, like he was working through normal channels. But because of his background, I believe the government somehow followed him, because he arrived on 26th or 27th, I can't remember. And again, because I know from inside the company that
And
this
what's the
trip
what's the significant of the 25th? The
25th
significance of the 25th.
was the first day the protests started. So when he arrived at a time where the government was kind of like looking around what's happening. where are
What's
all these
happening
people
here?
coming? Yeah, where are all these people coming from, and who drives them, and who's motivating them? And they were kind of
And it was a Facebook page.
yeah, they were kind of bought into a big conspiracy about that whatever that's happening cannot be just coincidence. It must be a series of events or mass organized and orchestrated by foreign powers. And they were trying to figure that out. So they kind of followed him. And I just had dinner with him on 27th because 28th was going to be one of the days where we don't know what's going to happen next. So I just wanted to see him before I just disappear from the scene. So I agreed with him to meet him for hookah. I'll smoke hookah and dinner in one of the cafes. And as soon as I finished my dinner with him, um, as I was walking in the dark street, it was like around midnight, and just four people surround me with they have machine guns and stuff, and they push me on the ground, they hit me, and then they basically handcuff me, put a head like something to cover my eyes, an eye cover, so that I can't see what's going on. It's like a movie scene. Well, I kept
Hmm.
trying to scream, but even people who would see you, they would not engage because these look like
What can they
they were
do?
not fearing, they were not wearing like official outfits, but they had guns, and they clearly looked like they know what they were doing. That they're not gonna stop. So you get a sense that okay, that's security. So they found me in that way, which which I think
But
it
they
was
eavesdrop with your conversation with Jared. Is that what happened?
no, they were following him. They were finding who is everyone who is he meeting,
Right.
and they found me to be a very
Ah.
like they have to arrest me. They have to know what's my story, why I meet this guy, what's happening. And that was part of the
Mm.
investigation. The big part of it was asking me about my connections with Google, my connections with the CIA. I mean, I had no connections with the CIA. My connect, what is driving me. They just can't understand, or they couldn't understand at the time my motivations for doing what I'm doing. They thought it must be that I'm just recruited and paid to believe in the certain way I believe in, to do whatever
Right.
under foreign
But it
agency,
was from the
and
heart.
I kind yeah, and I kind of tried to argue with them back and forth using logic and emotions that this is not what it's not what you think, and I do think that they did. Like at least the ones I talked to, they did have a different way of treating me as we go, which gives me a bit of a signal. I don't necessarily, security people don't give you the real impression. They're trained to do so. They don't give you the real
Right.
they don't need to. They actually prefer that you don't know what you think of them. So in that sense, I
Hmm.
I kind of I kind of feel like I was able to kind of deliver my message, but overall, most of the government, even until today, they just treat me with a lot of suspicion.
Right. What was it like being detained for those 11 days?
It was a very hard experience because, on one hand, you don't know when are you going to get out. You don't know what's going on. Like I was completely disconnected and isolated from the scene. Just imagine me in a very small, tiny room. That's not even well painted. It has like all these bad things that I'm smelling, and I kept coughing for hours because of it. And I'm blindfolded and handcuffed even when I go to the bathroom
The whole
or
time.
yeah, the whole time. And it was such a tough experience. I have to say that I probably still trying to kind of pass in the most positive way. But there are certain things in my head. I before I leave, I just hugged everybody. They allowed me to see some of their faces, which is also uncommon. Like you have to, they don't unfold you until you're
Mm.
out because they don't want you to recognize any of the faces of those who either
Remember.
interrogated you or beating you up or whatever that is. I don't know if I'm I guess like many years past, no problem. A couple of the officers actually liked me and they wanted me to see everybody, and I saw everybody, including those who were beating me up, and I hugged them and I told them inside in front of them that I wish them the best, and I actually wish it. And I get very irritated when people call that Stockholm syndrome. I like to call it Amsterdam syndrome. Because it's all about making making love. We're just here to love each other,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and that at the end of the day. the fact that someone oppresses me does not automatically make them oppressor for good, and the fact that one is oppressing me does not make them the evil people. I mean, even if they torture me, that does not make them the evil people, because I'm not in the game of assign. Of course, the act of torture is an evil act, and of course, it's unethical, and I oppose it with all what I can because I've actually experienced it. So I kind of know how horrible it is. You know, you just
Right.
go into your own terror room inside your head where you know all things are dull. You are no longer in control of your destiny.
Mm.
You just don't know nothing. You know, so even the food, someone is giving it to you, throwing it at you, and you have to accept whatever you're eating. And the food was okay. So thanks to the chefs
That's good.
in state security, you know, at least. But
They
it
came
was
through.
okay, not good. Huh? It was okay, you know, because I learned from my own experience in life and in the streets. Just live with whatever that's in front of you. You know, if I'm complaining about the food, I'll be beaten up there. So, but the food was something I
Mm.
could eat. The torture did not go into crazy limits. I did not get electrified.
Mm.
I was not, you know, I was not lift. There was no mark in my body from the beating. You know, all the beating was okay. I could have taken it. The humiliation, of course, all of that, as I say, is bad and horrible, and it's not something that I'm defending or justifying in any way. But at the end of the day, I believe it's part of my responsibility, since I'm working on trying to change reality in my own country, to kind of understand reality for what it is and deal with it and accept it. So when I leave while doing that to all of them, I believe that I'm working on my own. I'm working according to my own value system, in which I believe the whole thing about, you know, if I alienate them and they alienate me, they have power and they will win. If we communicate, then it's a different
Right.
story. So I don't want to cut the communication. I don't want to play the game of polarization. I don't do ACAB. I was tortured by police, but I don't believe ACAB at all. I believe that all cups are important to have in the society so that we can actually have a manageable society.
What's
And
ACAB?
all cups are
Are bad?
bastards. That's a common.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
it's a lingo. It's a lingo. You know,
Yeah.
sorry, because I'm in my own. It's a lingo
No, it's good
among.
to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Um, but it's a common
activists.
lingo that I
But
that I
this is
actually
not your
oppose.
perspective.
Yeah, I mean, and
Hmm.
it's not all the,
Right.
of course,
Right.
not all the activists have the same common view, but it's kind of like this idea that you are mad at the regime for being exclusive and so on, but then inside of you, you actually build up that kind of same exclusive idea that you just don't accept them at all, and you just treat them as completely alienated from, as if like they're just dictators and so on. Like in my own view now about things, I question uh, the generally speaking, a Western narrative to the events in my own country. Like this whole idea that their problem is that they don't have democracy, and if democracy exists, then their problems will be solved, and the lack of freedom of speech is the prior. Like I just think this whole, and I call it Western agenda because it is an agenda. It's not an ethical. It's not an ethical position. Ethical
Hmm.
positions don't change based on interests. So, since it's an agenda, I do think that at the end of the day, this agenda is a naive one, and and you know, I don't need much to prove its naivety, because at the end of the day, even the democratic solution in the West is being kind of like in a mess right now. It's not where it need to be at all. Like you see at the way how politicians are dealing with each other in the US, or the whole thing about Brexit in the UK, and one could step back and
Hmm.
ask, is this the real democracy? Is this the kind of idea of a ruling of the, we are just all enslaved by a process that is not necessarily optimum, and at the same time a bunch of us want to force it on, and I was one of them, on collapsing systems, or old fashioned systems, instead of collapsing old fashioned systems, as
Hmm.
if like it's a batch. Things don't work like that. It was a naive moment of when I did that, and I still think that there is a lot of naivety that's surrounding us, and you can see its impact in the global scale.
Yeah. I mean, we've had moments over the past couple of years where it's been like, what would we say if we were looking on from outside and what was happening in the US was happening elsewhere? And how would we characterize it? I
Yeah,
mean, look at the storming of the Capitol as the tip of the spear, but it's also just like this was it should have been a wake up moment for a lot of folks about, you know, let's make sure that we're buttoned up
yeah,
at home before we start to
and
try to
all the
influence
events need to
others.
be understood in context. You cannot just
Right.
create isolation events, focus on one event and call it as the whole reason why.
No
But
doubt.
no, things, and that's what basically I think a lot about right now. We are so invested in certain kind of problems that look good and bring us more attention, and the way we deal with
Mm-hmm.
these problems is not deep enough to fix the actual problem. So, for example, if me and you are good in math, 7 billion people, they live 24 hours a day, 18 hours they're up, and their kind of awareness of who they are and what they are is um, driven from all the sum of all the experiences they are experiencing, right? So if the experiences are
Totally.
good, generally their awareness and view is going to be more good. If they are bad, it's going to be more challenging, and so on and so forth. So if we have that like holistic view, and then we look at big social media companies that occupy a large percentage of the market share, and by design occupy a large number of hours of the consciousness of their users. And you look at the kind of philosophy that they operate in order to distribute the content to their users. And we're talking here about, billions of users receiving billions of information pieces on daily basis. These infrastructure networks, these like kind of like highways of information that is being designed, have not been designed with safety in mind. They have not. They actually have been designed with recklessness in mind, with growth in mind, with speed in mind, but not safety in mind. And safety gets prioritized as according to the experiences and limited experiences of the people who are operating the company from their headquartered. The design of tech problems, it's just basically you are in a headquarters somewhere in California where things are amazing, but you are operating your software where millions of people in Myanmar are using it. And if you do not prioritize
Yeah.
uh, um, uh, looking after the health of the network, not just the growth of the network, how healthy the network is, by looking at the type of engagements that people are having with each other. If you're not looking at that and you're just keeping it to in a chaotic system and whomever can have engagement wins, then you are basically facilitating hacking consciousness. And without knowing, I'm not, by the way, questioning the intentions of the people. And I have met a lot of people in these companies, and I've worked in these companies. So it's not a matter of questioning intentions. It's just a matter of questioning maturity, because a lot of the people in the tech companies do not admit to themselves that they have been immature about their understanding of the impact of their systems on the global scene, and they continue to be immature by just thinking that actually these, they're working on like batch of fixes, rather than thinking philosophically that there is
Mm-hmm.
actually a huge problem that we are facing as for the collective human consciousness, that it does not make sense that all these polarizing content, all these stupid funny crazy videos just makes us occupy most of our times. And guess what happens when you do that? People start slowly losing reason, and using humor to advocate reality, and you just lose the overall sense of balance inside of you to see things for what they are. And then you can have a leader that claims whatever they can claim, that it's always the biggest, it's always the best, it's always, and whatever these claims are true or not, it does not matter if it's true or not, because he can say it and they can believe it. And the same, by the way, just to be clear, I consider myself to be kind of a liberal, more than a conservative. But at the same time, I'm actually more frustrated by the liberals than the conservatives in general, because I think that the liberals claim that
Mm-hmm.
they always have solutions, that they are more open-minded, that blah blah blah. And I say claim because what I experienced was actually just a claim. Like, I've been in too many of these like sittings where we get like top people from Silicon Valley, and we're sitting down to discuss how can we fix democracy, and make sure that social media does not ruin the democratic scene. And every one of these sittings I was invited to, almost had zero people who are from the conservative side. So I always ask those people, how can you
Hmm.
think that you can fix a problem in which one of the wings is not available? I mean, you can't fix it. I mean, even if they are the problem, just alienating them doesn't make it happen. You can't come up with a solution driven by liberal values and enforce it on people who have conservative values. Things don't work like that. And I also tend to, just a last point,
Correct.
tend to think that, I think that right wing and left wing, it's like kind of a bird. You can't really travel with one of the wings on its own. Why? If you look at the patterns of liberalism and how individual characteristics of the people who are leading that kind of wave of progress and liberalism and so on, you would find one very common. They are recklessly optimistic. They push in directions where they don't know the where it's going. They get fascinated by short-term results,
Hmm.
and they discount long-term impacts. It has happened all the time, and the people who are conservative, as a result, kind of balance that view. On one hand, they are pretty stuck to many things that they don't want to change, although it might be better for them to change. But they are very skeptical towards a lot of the things they see in the liberal side of things and the progress side of things, and their skepticism saves us all. Their skepticism saves us all, because if you allow the liberals to push gas unstop, they are actually going to take the society into the wrong places, because simply, we are here because we have been connected to our roots. We are here because we are thousands of years worth of evolution, and we can't just discount human behavior, human nature, nature of environments, complicated state of transitions. If you want to transition any society from one state to another, there has to be a very complicated. We can't just disconnect all that and just be excited about banners and movements and trends and hashtags and hypes, and everyone is like creating a certain kind of hype and pushing it. That's why I kind of feel it is one of the things I kind of understand now, that we're all wrong, and we will not be able to figure things out
Hmm.
until we all stop and say we are all wrong. If we are in the game of polarization, if you are making more people polarizing in this world, no matter what the polarization is for, it's wrong, because at the end of the day, you can't operate a society with no trust. And once people are polarized, that's what the American politicians are just becoming. To be honest, I mean, I don't want to be offensive, but they are just making jokes of themselves, because when you are someone who is supposed to be a strong leader, and you are running a serious business, one of the biggest civilizations in the world, and your attitude is like reckless. I don't want to even call it a kid, because kids are amazing. Kids are mature. You can actually have a mature kid, but just kind of reckless behavior. And we all accept it as part. That's human behavior. Oh, that's how the TV runs. Oh, that's how the media. Oh, that's how the system. No, that's all bullshit. That doesn't work that way. If
Yeah.
there is a fundamental problem, then we need to figure out how to solve it, and not to further the polarization.
I want to pick up on a few things you said. First of all, I agree that we need a balance of liberal and conservative. I think that's important. I don't think having a one party system has worked well for anyone. And so I do think that's important. I also think it's important for both parties to approach things in good faith. And I think too often in recent times we've probably had, the right wing in this country not really operate in good faith. I mean, it exists on the left side too, but it's been sad to see the lack of good faith action and good faith negotiation in politics. And then finally, just the idea that certainty is everyone's so certain. I think this is something you were hitting on. So
Hmm.
certain that they have the answers.
Hmm.
And the real possibility of growth is saying, I don't know, or I might be wrong, or there's a chance that this might not be the definitive solution. Why might it not work? How could we do this better? What do you think? Someone who has a different viewpoint in terms of the way that you see the world. That's so important. And it's unfortunate that everything's become so flattened and two-dimensional right now.
Yeah, I think that it's unfortunate, but to be honest, it makes sense. As in,
Hmm.
the design of the game makes it this way. Why? Because At the end of the day, there are tools now. So, for example, if one of these politicians is trolling another one, they get much more attention. And they need the
Yeah.
attention because that's the way they can actually raise funds, because they are a known politician and people are paying attention to them. What I'm trying to say here is, like, we all need to kind of stop and zoom out a little bit and re-envision how to fix things without alienating anyone and without assuming. You said that you think that the left, the conservatives are kind of more fixated into their positions, but me and you kind of have to understand that this is not to
Hmm.
oppose the liberals. This is something in their character. This is something they have experienced. This is the way they think, and in order for that way of thinking to move or advance, you have to kind of respect their own value system so that they can listen to you. So, for example, you think that the right side is less kind of like less listening and less respectful to the left side, but I can tell you, if you are in the right, if you are religious, a Christian religious, and you
They're going to
see
feel the
you open
same
a
way.
comedy,
Yeah.
yeah, you open a comedy show making fun of your God, making fun of your religious beliefs, making, you are going to feel the same way. And again, this kind of
Hmm.
phenomena is what we need to deal with, which is we need to kind of figure out how can we build some sort of meta thinking that absorb all of us, so we can think then to fix these issues. But I can't think that a solution will emerge when comedians are the ones who are running the philosophy scene in reality, because they are capturing people's
100%.
attention
Yeah.
in a way or another. With all due respect to comedians,
Hmm.
I like them, I enjoy them, and I can name quite a lot that makes me happy. But at the end of the day, countries should not be run by comedians. Presidents or president nominees in a realistic world cannot have their hit being with a comedian because they crack a bunch of jokes. Ha ha ha! We're talking about a real world here. We're not
Hmm.
talking about your ability to present. So for for us to really start solving the problems, there has to be some deep questionings of the methods we have been using. You can't allow people to mock each other, accuse each other with no limits, and then think that they're not going to be polarized in a horrible way. They're going to be polarized, and sometimes they're going to choose against their own interest as well, just to punish the other side. Because we see that in street
Well,
fights,
that's become,
and
yeah, the whole American political scene has been
yeah,
punitive
that's it.
recently.
It
So,
starts
yeah.
local, and it keeps growing until it become a global
Hmm.
phenomena within the
Gross.
environment.
Yeah. There's one thing that I've been thinking about, like this whole conversation, which I want to bring up, which is that, it's been interesting hearing your perspective on social media, and sort of how it's helped to. You had this remarkable line in one of your TED Talks: "The same tool that united us to topple dictators eventually tore us apart." And I think that, like, you're someone who's been associated with one of the most positive uses of social media, an opportunity to rally a population against a regime that was unresponsive and push for change. And so, what does it feel like to you? Because they were spray painting Thanks Facebook on the walls in Cairo after the revolution. So, do you have this sort of, like, push and pull where you're like, well, I'm glad that social media was available for that, but I'm also nervous about what it's developed into? Or, like, when you were pushing those levers back in 2011, did you have a feeling where things might go?
It was not a feeling where things might go, but it was kind of a question in my head. Like, I can see in this tool so much power that it can be abused
Hmm.
by anyone, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I was personally a victim of the. I mean, not victim, but I was targeted by the tool, by tons and tons. There was like a page that has like over 1 million people, and they would write things I never said. They say, "Well, Ghonim is saying this, such and such," and they put it as, and I reported it
On
to
your
Facebook.
page?
No,
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
page, not on their
Oh,
page. They
different
they just,
page.
yeah, they claim
Yeah.
that I made a statement, and the statement is ridiculous and horrible and extreme.
Hmm.
But no one's checks who said what. And at the time, I even
Hmm.
sent a message to Facebook, and they said we can't remove it. We're not gonna be in the,
The
they have
arbiters
to
of
kind of,
truth.
yeah, they
Yeah.
can't judge that if I said it or not. As I was trying to say, like, my relationship, I got targeted by the same tools, and I've seen how at the end of the day, being excited about a tool is no longer something I do. It's naive.
Mm.
Being excited about a tool that continuously develops is even more naive. And being excited about a tool that evolves around financial principles, controlled by a bunch of investors trying to amass huge number of audience, and selling advertisement on it. That kind of a model. In my view, it still exists, and it probably will exist for a little bit. But I think it's doomed to fail. I mean, look at if Facebook did everything great, and they kind of made their users happy, users would not flock to social networks as they appear. Because at the end of the day, reality is humans are actually looking for a good experience all the time. And if you offer them this good experience, they can stick with you. But the problem is, and as I understand that, these companies get so excited about connections. Mark Zuckerberg have already reviewed a lot of his positions in that sense and talked about it. But they get so excited about amassing large number of people. They get so excited about growing the figures and advertising and whatever, but they don't ask themselves philosophical questions. They hide behind, oh, that's, when I talk to anyone, that's human behavior. Well, it's not true, because human behavior is like, we all know in design that if you change a button color, things change. So in that sense, if you create an
Hmm.
environment that is decent, people will be decent. And if you create the right tools to enforce decency, that's fine. And as long as they are non-partisan, and as long as they are not enforced by a platform on its own. And that's why I think there are some interesting things about Clubhouse, but I still think in the same way. I'm just using it as a tool now. I don't know where it's going. I'm not going to be excited
Hmm.
about a tool. I'm no longer putting my emotional capacity on corporates, on companies that basically want to become huge and I just think this whole path is somehow part of the reason why we're in the problem we're in. Everybody is kind of rushing for success. All these networks kind of chew more than they can bite. They just took more and more and more, because they have to report every 3 months here and there, and increase their stock price. But these tools are somehow right now are not in the service of the people it claims it is.
Yeah. I want to address that. Let's take a quick pause, and we'll be right back here on the Big Technology Podcast with Wael Ghonim. All right, we are back for the second part of the Big Technology Podcast here with Wael Ghonim, who helped spark the Egyptian revolution using Facebook. Before the break, we were talking a little bit about these social networks, and sort of maybe we can get into the solutions in this last bit of our conversation. Um, the one thing I want to ask before we get into solutions is just again thinking about the problem. Um, how do you view the good that? First of all, do you view what you did as good when you started the page that
Of course,
sparked?
and I
And
still I still benefit from social
right.
media every day. There is a lot of good that comes out of these networks, and that's by design. But 1 gram of bad is remove 1,000 grams of good. Uh,
Uh-huh.
kind of, if you think about it, if you just spoil 1,000 gram of good with a gram of bad, it can just get all spoiled eventually and go bad. So it's not that, and
Hmm.
this is something very important to people who work in social media networks. Don't get defensive when people
Hmm.
are just going after you for the problems you have, because we still think there is a version in, we have not forgot all the good moments, all the great things that have happened because of social media in our lives. It's just that the current memory is so occupied with all that polarization and all that bad stuff that's happening right now.
Yeah. Do you think there like it's interesting what you when you mentioned about 1 gram versus 1,000 grams? It's like Disney has this rubric where like you have good moments which are magic moments and bad moments which are tragic moments. And they've like figured out like if you go into one of their park and you have one tragic moment, it takes 30 magic moments to make up for it. And
Thank you. It kind of makes
yeah,
sense, we humans
hmm
do that on every day. If there's
yeah,
someone who is like kind of nice to you, but one time he was really horrible, what
there
you're
you
gonna
go.
tag their mind, and you're just gonna say they're at least crazy, they because they show you a horrible side.
Right.
And that is what we all need to understand. It's not about targeting these companies and claiming that they're not doing good, or we are telling them this so that they can tell us about their amazing efforts in great directions. No argument. They're good human souls, and I assume that
hmm
they're trying to live their own way without hurting others while making things better. However, the real problem is,
hmm
because of the defensive nature of humans, and because of the lack of that kind of experience within the tech industry, all these consequences happen. I would call them unintended or intended, whatever. Consequences happen,
hmm
and they really have no owner to fix. And most of the time, the solution is kind of like, we sit down and keep talking about it, and it's never the solution. The real solution is kind of
Right.
rethink the design.
Do you think they'll ever? I mean, do you think so? Do you think they've become too defensive when it comes to criticism to start rethinking the design? And just a secondary part of that, what would you change with the design? I mean, if we're talking about a building a product that better reflects the good parts of humanity, how might you do it?
So, great two questions. The first question, I really don't know, because I'm not inside the companies. So my view is super limited to the outside perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not comfortable making a judgment about their internal efforts. Yet I'm seeing from the outside, like I did not see any evolving concept that came out of Facebook that is changing the nature of dialogue within the platform. It hasn't happened. Do I think that a solution like that exists or possible? I believe, I'm sure the people there have the experience of understanding what kind of problems and how to deal with them. So I believe that, yeah, you can come up with practical solutions. And by the way, people think of solutions in a certain big way. I think Clubhouse, for example, the current version of it, not necessarily the future ones, the way it is designed doesn't make you pay attention all the time to how audience are engaging with what you're saying. So, for example, on one hand, that kind of drops engagement in a way, because, of course, if everybody's clapping and we count the number of claps and people know how many are clapping to this and how many are clapping to that
You
and all
play to
that
the
kind of stuff,
applause.
it's going to all be exciting and fun. But guess what? The game is going to be eventually hacked. Why? Because the people who are optimizing to be recognized and be nice and get
Mm-hmm.
all the claps are not necessarily the ones who have the value. So the design right now, somehow, just because it did not manipulate and tap into that kind of human behavior just to increase the number of audience, is by design making things calmer. So what I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
tell here, my fellow friends who are thinking too much about how to come up with holistic solutions to solve the problems of social media networks, is that sometimes actually the solutions are way easier than we think they are. And sometimes the solutions
Agreed.
have to do with the design of the experience rather than the algorithms and the machine learning and whatever that is. I remember just a quick example here.
Mm-hmm.
They say, to know the difference between a marketeer and an engineer. They asked both of them to fix the problem that the escalator is a slow one, and that people get bored as the escalator keeps going up. So the engineer kept trying to solve the problem by fixing the machine work, whatever that's in the process to increase the speed by a bit. But the marketeer put a mirror, because in his assumption, if you put a mirror, people start looking at themselves in the mirror, and they're going to lose a sense of how much time have passed as the elevator goes up. And not that I'm
Amazing.
suggesting this over that, but what I'm just saying is, like, you can actually think of easy solutions to improve decency in environments like Facebook. You can actually reduce polarization by not building everything just around engagement numbers. And what to do exactly, I don't think that's the problem. The real problem is that if you do that, you make less money. That's the real problem. Not,
Totally.
I mean, maybe there is a
Yeah.
way where you can make more money, but unfortunately, I just think that resources on Earth are like they behave in an interesting way, even if they are resources created by humans. If you accumulate a lot of them in a short period of time, you are surely going to lose them in a short period of time. And if you accumulate them in a balance and slow and well rooted way of time, you are gonna for sure last for longer. So whatever that's happening because of technology is that we kind of rush everything. Everything happens, and you can look at the numbers, the dashboards, and the investors have higher expectations of you. So this whole ecosystem, when I say a solution, when I think of a solution, I really think that one different designs within the experiences that can be tested to see how can you kind of lower the tensity, the heat, the temperature. Just lower the temperature.
Yeah.
Build things that reward people for being decent. Show more things that are. But if you are in the company thinking ads, ads, ads all the time, thinking revenue, revenue, revenue all the time, or if you are trying to do these changes while not taking revenue hits initially, in either cases, it's not going to work because for a change in a mass, and of course, here is what I say. It is true that there are losses to doing something like that from a perspective of any company, but also the company is not aware of the losses it is already taking now because of their brand hit. Because maybe Facebook
Totally.
in life could have lasted for 30 years and it would only last for 20. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it would have lasted for 50 years, but it
Hmm.
will last for 30. But then how do you really know all of that? You can't. There is no way for you to know. The only way for you to know is look at the current moment. Are you actually being as good as you can? And by the way, one last part is we want improvements, and I personally don't want like a whole change of the system, because if you change everything, everything changes. So I'm not naive. I'm not looking for a complete makeover of social media. Maybe it happens through another platform. Just like how Clubhouse is coming in and changing a bit of the nature of
Hmm.
communication between individuals. Maybe it happens that way, but at the same time, if it's meant to happen within Facebook, it will have to be gradual. But there has to be way more transparency. There has to be way more commitment towards making sure that the collective awareness is not up for grab by human traffickers.
Hmm. Yeah. Look, nothing annoys me more in this world than when people are like, social media just reflects humanity. It's like, if a mirror is not perfectly constructed, it will distort. And you can see
Thank
the
you.
differences between the conversations on Facebook and the conversations on Twitter and the conversations on Clubhouse, and they each reflect differently. And there's got to be a way to design this stuff that makes it not reflect the worst parts of us, but the
We
best.
have already designed a lot of these kind of experiences in the past. It's
Hmm.
just that it was pretty local. It was tailored towards small numbers of people. So the kind of when globalization happened and everyone kind of wanted to operate and open in huge markets, everybody kind of rushed in their designs. The whole design process of things that are used by billions of people does not really look at the consequences in the right way. How many people within these platforms kind of advocate for unintended consequences. How many people have experiences outside the experience of the tech environment? Also, tech has a lot of fundamental problems that is created around the industry itself. It doesn't have anything to do with Facebook itself. That, for example, if you're in the oil industry, before you dig a hole, you have to kind of talk to thousands of people and get like hundreds of paper and meet this and
Hmm.
that and lobby with this and that, and then you dig the hole. In tech, before you even talk to anyone, you probably could have had 100 million users already, and you are changing the scene because
That's
of
what
the nature
happens. Yeah.
that.
There's like 10 people and a billion users. That's typical scene. Yeah. Sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So, and I'm not here to say this is wrong and we should stop it. We should manage this. I'm not an idiot. I'm not naive.
We know that.
What I'm trying to say is, like, since we are trying to understand why things are where they are, somehow we need to kind of understand what are the general characteristics of this industry that differentiates it from other industries. So it's a very high speed industry. I actually think one of the problems of high tech that it's high tech. There's a lot of influence on tech. We are here to live experiences and feel feelings, and tech is just a tool. And if you just take the high tech as your own way, live around gadgets and occupy with yourself with plastic and all these kind of virtual life experiences, then that's not really high tech, because it is using the human intelligence into very low low quality transactions most of the time. And it also lowers humans' ability to do cognitive things. And there has been a lot of researches about that, right? So high tech is supposed to raise our own awareness, raise our own experiences, improve our, that's what I would expect from high tech. But unfortunately, high tech now means let's figure out a solution to any problem, without really making sure that this is an actual solution, and it's not just a way to create a more complicated problem.
Yeah, I know the buzzword is disrupt, but like disrupt for disruption's sake, is that good? Like, shouldn't it be improve or something like that? That always, well, especially recently, struck me as something that's been a little bit
Yeah, and
off.
by design, a lot of the people who are trying to disrupt, they don't take time to understand the existing system. They make a lot of arrogant
Hmm.
assumptions about the reality of things. They rush into conclusions about why bad things are happening. But the reality is sometimes bad things are happening because there are crucial, hard design problems that makes them happen if you take that path. And they design other paths where they can avoid the problem, but then fall into huge other problems in the future. For example, uh, um,
Yep. We've talked
I'm not
about a
against.
few, like Robin
Yeah,
Hood.
I'm not against multinational companies. I'm not against corporations, but I'm also interested to understand what does it mean that individuals within a company that has not been voted for by public control the transportation sector across the world. They really understand who
Hmm.
is where, what they are. It's kind of like, just because they can build this model that can go everywhere in the world that we rely on. And what happens when these people turn out to be corrupt, or when the model get broken after people have completely relied on it, and all these kind of things. I just think actually the real spirit of tech initially started with democratizing information, giving access to everybody, making opportunities to people. So one would imagine then the design is going to be these kind of islands that help other islands get formed and created, and we build the whole world of that. But it ended up, we
Hmm.
played it the usual game because of the negative, the dark side of human nature, where everyone is playing the game to control and look good. And I don't blame them, because also you don't want to question the system, as well as you see the good things you are doing as you do. Like if I'm Google, I'm seeing all the great things I'm doing as I'm building the company. So
Hmm.
it kind of slips in it slips in our heads that we just start optimizing to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you are operating opposite to the spirit of the experience of democratizing access, because all those peoples who you are giving them information want to have a better life experience, want to have a better role in life, and they want to do something. So if things are centralized in small, it's a numbers game. If things are centralized in small superpowers, whatever they are, corporates, countries, in certain individuals within a sector, whatever that is, that leaves very small room for others to grow, and increases level of frustration among people, and get some kind of those people who want to interrupt rather than disrupt. If you keep disrupting,
Right.
and they just want to interrupt you because your disruption is not adding value in their own value system. And here I think
Hmm.
one of the very important solutions is somehow um, having more conversations with the investors around this. We target Facebook, we target Twitter, but the reality is, if you really want to change this
Hmm.
environment, convince a few big investors. Why?
Talk to
Because
the
they're gonna,
VCs. But the
yeah, they're
VCs
gonna.
don't seem, yeah, they don't seem really willing. Well, many, we've had a few that on this show that have been receptive. Roy Bahat, one example. But unfortunately, it seems more and more that investors are, putting up blinders and crawling into their, own reality holes.
But I'm
from
sure
what I see.
I hear you, and
Hmm.
I'm sure that there are some other kinds are questioning. I mean,
Yes.
since they
Yeah.
are in the game, they must be seeing it from different perspectives. And
Totally.
I'm still looking. I've seen enough people that are not optimizing for profit. You know, I'm not against profit.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to have a nice life and a lot of money and whatever. So I'm not against profit, and I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the system. But at the same time, I'm not going to make my life about that profit. I'm not going to create a whole reason for existence and call that, well, that's how capitalism should work. No, I mean, let's say capitalism is not a religious. You know, we can just actually take things here and there and modify them and see what happens. We can try and
Correct.
create different ways, shapes, and forms to influence the model. And by the way, I believe that change doesn't take a lot of people anyway. You don't have to have a lot of VCs. It's probably a couple of VCs who are
Mm-hmm.
disciplined enough. And they happen to be well known, so they inspire certain type of founders to help build on new principles, and they will be okay
Mm-hmm.
waiting, because that's the biggest problem with the existing the cycle. You know, you can't just build something right in that kind of cycle. You're going to build something that grows into cancer in this cycle of like trying to
Mm-hmm.
Series A, Series B. Let's look at the users. What is happening? You know, we need to improve this number because the investor is looking at it, and you know, this whole kind of world is not the environment where you're actually. I mean, you can add value, of course, all the time, but that's not suited for adding value. You know, adding value happens if it's linked with ability to monetize most of the time. You know,
Totally.
look at the teams and how they're organized and the meetings and how they're shaped. You will see always like some sort of focus on making sure that the business is not impacted. You know, kind of Facebook, YouTube did not want to be the ministry of truth until the advertisers decided they're not happy, and then
Mm-hmm.
the ministry of truth was launched. You know, which is fine. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's their platform. But I'm just saying their position have changed because of the pressure of the financial institutions, and not necessarily because of the pressure of the public opinion.
Yeah, and I know there are like some investors out there that are receptive to thinking outside of the way that has been traditionally thought in Silicon Valley, where like impact on society matters, as much as profit and growth. And I know some of them listen to the show, so I'll take back what I said earlier, that I do think that there are some that are engaging. And you're right. We need a
And you know,
yeah.
just to also fix what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, there are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people inside Facebook and Google
Yeah.
and Twitter and other companies
Mm-hmm.
who would actually listen to this and kind of agree and try and do something
Yeah.
about it. So
Their heart's in
I
the right
think
place.
another thing I learned in my own experience in the Arab Spring or the Egyptian Revolution is not to make assumptions on behalf of people's intentions, and not to make negative
For sure.
assumptions about the future, how the future could emerge, given my cynicism towards someone. It's not my job. I mean, if they don't do it, they don't do it because it's their problem and they're going to pay a price for it. But it's not my job to keep saying they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to do it. They're not. There's no one that wants to do this. There's that kind of defeat the purpose of us trying to fix this in the spirit of fixing the problem.
For real. No, I think it's important to look at things with a little bit of optimism and realism versus a sense of resignation, which we see too often. So it's a nice note to bring our conversation to a close on. I do want, before we go, I want to hear more about, just quickly, what are you up to now and what's next for you? You
Well,
live in the Bay Area now too, so
I live
that's an
in
interesting
California,
move.
and I haven't
Yeah.
been working for 2 years and a half right now.
Uh-huh.
Mostly working on myself and trying. I went through a
Mm-hmm.
very hard depression
Mm-hmm.
because of all the events that I've experienced in Egypt and then leaving the country. I haven't visited back home for 7 years now. I
Mm-hmm.
recently got divorced, so I'm kind of like trying to stabilize my life, if you would say, and bring it into a better place. And as I'm doing that, I'm enjoying it, and I learn to be very honest
Mm-hmm.
with everyone. You know, I kind of like if someone is
I
hiring
found
me for
out.
a job, I don't mind telling them about my depression, and I actually would
Mm-hmm.
appreciate if they don't hire me. Why? Because if
Right.
they are not going to respect me and my own
Mm-hmm.
emotional state, and they just want to make a use of my mind that has been under huge depressive emotional experiences, then I have no respect or no passion to work for them. So I kind of in this time I've been trying to work on myself and bring myself up in that sense. I've been trying to reflect about what have happened, what were the mistakes I have done, where are the sources of my naivety. I kind of like applied this function in my head that whenever reality doesn't meet expectations, I'm gonna like really debug my expectations, because it is not smart to expect good things and then find things bad things happen and then victimize yourself and sit on the side crying. The right thing is to understand, what did you miss, what was part of the reality that you didn't see. And I hope actually this is something that because it has been something that helped me a lot in my own I call that active meditation, because I don't know how to meditate by just stopping my line of thought. I don't try and stop my line of thought. I know there are different kind of meditations. So I meditate in the way where any idea that comes to mind, I just have to process it and think about, why is it coming? What can I do
Mm-hmm.
about balancing it? So that when it comes back later, it comes in a more shaped form. So I'm managing my own subconscious in a way, while kind of preparing myself for a startup that I'll be working on. It has been years since I wanted to do it, and unfortunately, the events have taken me into undesirable directions. But I'm in a much better place now, and I'm kind of ready to get back to the scene in a more useful way, hopefully.
Yeah, well, look, I think that your voice is a extremely important one. Your perspective, given your life experience and just the way that you think about these things is valuable to any company here. So, and it's impressive that
I
you,
thank you, and I
for real.
appreciate that you
Hmm.
saying this, and it has not matched my experience. Just for your information,
Well, I
I
think
don't think
that,
you will be surprised.
yeah. Well, look, I think that for all the Silicon Valley companies talking a big game about how to be responsible and how to think differently, if they didn't want to bring you on or find a way to work together, then I don't think there's much meaning to their words. So I'm just
Well,
gonna be honest. Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate the strength of your backing. I
Hmm.
just think that sometimes people don't listen to you because you don't have the right narrative for them. I kind of
Hmm.
always think of my own personal responsibility, and I definitely still lack the right narrative, because the right narrative would get things done. We are unlike what we like to think. Unlike what we like
Hmm.
to think, we're very logical creatures. If I know how to show you my logic in a way that becomes logical to you, you're going to adopt it, because why not? At the end of the day, it's not really, we're
Hmm.
not here, and that's a good way to end this. We're not really here to ruin each
Hmm.
other experiences or point at each other or judge each other. That's kind of a
Hmm.
very bad way to waste our life experiences. I've done that for a while, and I'm done with it. It's like it's the worst kind of addiction, to just get yourself in these negative
Hmm.
cycles. We're here to try and add value. So I strive to kind of uh, fix my own shortcomings, and hopefully it will eventually be appreciated.
Yeah, well, we here on Big Technology Podcast definitely appreciate it. I'll tell you that much. People who want to
I
get in touch with
appreciate
you, is
that.
there a good way for them to do it?
Well, I'm in, my email is my last name at gmail.com,
Hmm.
Ghonim at gmail.com. And
Hmm.
on Twitter, I'm at Ghonim, but I write mostly in Arabic. So
Yeah.
I've been thinking about creating an English account, but maybe
Hmm.
if as things go, if I feel like there's an enough audience that can relate to what I say and would like to hear me, I'm happy to do that.
Well, I encourage it,
Always happy to
and
be in your podcast as well.
thank you. I hope you come back again. I really do. I got to about 25% of the stuff I wanted to talk about. So, not a commentary on you, just because it was so interesting in terms of the directions that we went. So, I hope we do it again. This will also definitely be the longest episode that we've had, and I'm proud of it.
I hope we
And
don't bore
then,
people.
yeah, for sure. And then we'll have a clubhouse discussion at some point, uh,
I would love
if
to
you're
have
into it.
a clubhouse discussion with you.
Great.
And I've been
Hmm.
experimenting with the platform a bit, and as I said, like
Yeah,
it's
I've
a
dipped
nice
in.
start.
Yeah, they seem
Oh,
very
nice.
lively. Yeah, so I can't
Fresh
understand
start.
anything, but they seem a lot of fun. So, but let's do one in English sometime soon. I'll put the details on that on the newsletter, the Big Technology newsletter. I'll just drop it when this thing drops. Within the day or two, sort of when that's going to happen, so we can work out a time and make that work. But it's really always great to chat. I love catching up with you, Wael,
Same
and
here.
I hope we do it again soon.
Same here.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for listening. We do these shows every week, new episode every Wednesday. Join us next week for a conversation with Kayvon Bakebour, who is the head of product at Twitter. That should be an interesting conversation. They're trying to copy Clubhouse, which we've talked a lot about today. They also recently banned Donald Trump, so I'm sure we'll touch on both of those things. Thank you, Nate Gwatney, for editing. Thank you for the folks at Red Circle for hosting and selling ads on the show. And thanks always to you, the listeners, for coming each week and joining us here. If this is your first time, please hit subscribe. Again, new episodes every Wednesday. And if you've been here for a while and could rate us on Apple Podcasts, that would go a long way. All right, everybody. Until next week, we will see you then on the Big Technology Podcast. Take care and have a good one.